From the 1960s to the 1990s, the Troubles afflicted the region of Northern Ireland. Intense animosity flourished between the British Loyalists and the Irish Nationalists. The main conflict is caused by a debate over which country rightly should rule the province of Northern Ireland, Great Britain or Ireland. Throughout the duration of the 30-year struggle, thousands of citizens feel the direct harm of the Troubles, either economically, socially, or politically. This has caused many citizens on both sides of the conflict to take matters into their own hands, more often using violence as a medium. But what inspires a person to commit their life to a revolutionary cause? What kind of person is willing to die for a radical movement? These questions can be best answered by studying the life and death of Bobby Sands. Bobby Sands, an active member of the IRA, died after a 66-day-long hunger strike in Longkesh prison, fighting for political prisoner status for 30,000 men. I was only a working-class boy from a nationalist ghetto, but it is repression that creates the revolutionary spirit of freedom. I shall not settle until I achieve liberation of my country, until Ireland becomes a sovereign, independent, socialist republic. Bobby Sands. Bobby is born to Rosalind Kelly and John Sands on March 28, 1951. Rosalind was a weaver who lived during the 1920s and the 1930s, a time where police forces were heavily anti-Catholic. John was a baker, raised as a Protestant for the majority of his life. With Bobby's two sisters, Bernadette and Marcella, the family lived in a small estate outside North Belfast called Abbot Cross. Strong Protestant influences are noticeable in the community, and as a result, the family attempts to quietly practice their Catholic faith. However, their secret is discovered by neighbors who harass Rosalind until the Sands decide to move. The Sands family travels to Rathcoole, a loyalist district in North Belfast. As a child, Sands attended Stella Maris primary and secondary school. Bobby is known to be a lazy student, but was teeming with intelligence. He preferred playing soccer in the schoolyard with his friends over his academic life. Bobby and other local boys in his neighborhood created an amateur soccer club. It did not matter to the young boys if one was Protestant or Mormon. Each player had to play well or well enough for a spot on the team. As Bobby grew more into an adolescent, Belfast grew to be a more hostile environment for Catholics. Sands noticed his Protestant comrades would no longer speak to him, which confused and frustrated him greatly. By 1969, violence against Catholics was becoming a trend around the Belfast area. When Sands turns 15, he graduates Stella Maris Secondary School. He applies to Newton Abbey Technical College. By 1970, Bobby is employed as an apprentice bus builder for Alexander's Coachworks in North Belfast, and he makes £18 a week. It is here where Sands first experiences sectarian intimidation from co-workers. Employees would shamelessly harass Sands for his Catholic faith. Colleague Bernard Fox described Bobby, in the face of abuse, as meek. He did not fight back against his attackers. For the 2 years of his employment, Sands would be badgered through notes in his lunch and locker, telling him to leave. He continues to work at Coachworks until his employer informs him of staff cuts. His employment is terminated the very next day. Back in Rathcoole, Bobby finds employment as a bartender at the Glen Inn. It would be here that Sands would find his ties to the IRA, as Glen Inn was often frequented by members of the IRA. Bobby organized a small auxiliary unit composed of his group of friends. Bobby's commitment to the IRA is solidified when the Sands family is pushed out of their home for a second time. Gangs had continually circled his home in Rathcoole late at night, shouting slurs. Rocks and trash are thrown through the Sands family windows. The Sands migrate to Twinbrook in South Belfast. The neighborhood stands as refuge for other Catholic families intimidated out of their homes and livelihoods. The district becomes overpopulated as more Catholic families seek sanctuary in Twin Brook. Most of the homes in the area were unfinished, but it did not stop families from moving into a home without water, electricity, or heat. It was in Twin Brook where Bobby Sands took a more active leadership role in the IRA. Bobby was a constant target for the British police. They kept him under surveillance and interrogated him, which often ended with Sands being beaten. In October 1972, Bobby Sands is arrested for the first time. Prior to his arrest, Sands is living in the home of a woman in Twin Brook. She gave Bobby permission to hide guns in her house, but became frightened by recent surveillance tactics and IRA attacks. The woman contacts the authorities and welcomes them into her home. She informs the police about the gun's hiding place. They find 4 pistols and 2 packages of ammunition. While evading police, Bobby travels to Dundalk to gather more firearms to dispense to IRA units back in Belfast. He is captured on the Belfast-Dublin motorway when an RUC officer noticed his car. He surrenders without incident. He awaits trial at Crumlin Road Jail. He is often visited by his girlfriend Geraldine. Bobby and Geraldine's entire relationship is strained by Bobby's interaction with the IRA. Geraldine never supported Sands' involvement in the IRA and felt resentful of the organization. However, the IRA would always be Bobby's first love. On one fateful visit to Crumlin Road Jail, Geraldine informed Bobby she was pregnant. They planned to wed 3 days before Bobby's sentencing. Geraldine is 7 months pregnant at the time, while Bobby is just shy of his 19th birthday. In 1973, Bobby is sentenced to 5 years imprisonment. He is found guilty of theft, arms possession, and membership in the IRA. He is transferred to Cage 8 in Long Kesh. During his first sentence in Long Kesh, Sands utilized his time playing guitar, learning Irish, and acclimating to the prison life. Most of Bobby's time spent in Long Kesh assisted him in developing his writing skills. He began to write for the Republican press under a pen name, Marcella. He kept the press updated and informed about the conditions of prisoners in Long Kesh. In the beginning of his 66-day-long hunger strike, he kept a diary of his thoughts until he could no longer muster the effort. He is released from Long Kesh on April 13, 1976. He is welcomed home by Geraldine and their son, Gerald, into a small house in Summerhill Gardens. Bobby reports back to his local IRA unit. He quickly receives a central position, leaving him in charge of 9 to 10 volunteers. It was his goal that the Twin Brook community would associate the IRA in a more positive light and be more willing to openly support their actions. He became involved in social, housing, and political issues of the community. He desired Twin Brook to be self-sufficient or independent from the British government. Many people in Bobby's community relied on him to create community events. He became an essential member of his community in the short amount of time he was free from the walls of Long Kesh. Bobby's simple life of service would not keep him from the problems of the Troubles. On October 14, 1976, Bobby Sands and other volunteers of the IRA hijacked a van from a local bystander. They loaded the van with explosives and detonators. With guns in tow, the group was en route for the Station View Street. Bobby planned to destroy a local furniture store as an economic target. The bombs exploded and caused immense damage to the store and surrounding area. However, the group did not escape, as they were soon surrounded by British policemen and military. Their initial plan may have succeeded, but Bobby Sands was in custody again, and for the last time. Sands is sentenced to 14 years in Long Kesh prison on September 5th, along with 3 other IRA volunteers involved with the bombing. Upon his arrival to Long Kesh, Sands quickly joins the ranks of prisoners refusing to wear prison uniforms, known as the Blanket Men. The Blanket Men protested for the rights of political prisoner status, which includes wearing their own civilian clothing. The Blanket Men are not allowed to leave their cells. They are isolated because most prison activities require a uniform, including visits. The men attended Mass every Sunday, not for religious reasons, but to speak with fellow prisoners and gather goods, like cigarettes and letters. The blanket men were resistant to the prison officers, often fighting back and acting insubordinate. This was usually accompanied by severe beatings. He began to feel the protest was becoming stationary and ineffective. The no-blanket protest soon intensified into a no-wash protest. On March 20th, 1978, the blanket men of Long Kesh refused to bathe, shave, or clean their prison cells. The protest included men wiping their fecal excrement on the walls of their cells. However, the British government refused to concede to their demands of political prisoner status. Bobby Sands and other prisoners decided to escalate the strike once again. He began to ask for volunteers for the first hunger strike of Long Kesh. Over 148 men enlisted for the hunger strike. 7 men were chosen, but not Bobby, much to his dismay. The hunger strike began on October 27, 1980, and would only conclude if their demands were met. Their demands: the right to wear their own clothing, the right to not perform hard labor, the privilege to associate, the right to organize, and the right to have all that was lost in remission to be restored. These actions would only appear to be futile, as the prisoners only received false promises from the British government in order to conclude their initial hunger strike. Bobby Sands began to plan for a second hunger strike. Sands believed the first hunger strike was not strong enough. He tells a fellow inmate, "Because of what happened in the first hunger strike, they'll not take us seriously until someone dies." Sands had every intention on dying on his hunger strike. On March 1st, 1981, Bobby Sands refused the food brought to his prison cells. The guards mock him by placing it on a table in his cell, where his foot sits. Sands exclaims, "They could put it on my knee and I wouldn't touch it." All the men of Long Kesh prison cheered him on with support, but felt a sense of dread when speaking with Bobby. They knew they were speaking to a dead man. On March 23rd, Sands is transferred to the prisoners' hospital. The men on his prison block would never see Bobby Sands alive again. On March 6th, the 5th day of Bobby Sands' hunger strike, the MP for Fermanagh South Tyrone, Frank McGuire, died of a sudden heart attack. Republicans began to ponder the idea of Bobby Sands running for Parliament under the Sinn Féin party. There was a debate amongst the group to put Sands in the ticket. Many thought Bobby Sands' candidacy would not move the British government, but it could give a new perspective to the conflicts in prisons. On April 10th, 1981, Bobby Sands won the seat in Parliament with 30,492 votes. Sands and his comrades were overjoyed. Margaret Thatcher responded to the Sands win with, "A crime is a crime is a crime. It is not political, it is a crime." Bobby's health soon took a turn for the worse. His body was decorated with broken blood vessels. Those who visited Sands noted the immense amount of pain he was in. On May 14th, 1981, Bobby fell into a coma. He is given his last sacramental rites by a priest and dies the following morning, on May 5th, 1981. Bobby Sands was the first of 10 men to die on the 1981 Irish hunger strike in Long Kesh prison. Bobby Sands was born an ordinary boy in North Belfast. He grew up during a time of intense intimidation and fear. He did not shy away from this fact. He joined the IRA because he could not let innocent people like his family or his neighbors be subjugated to the oppression and harassment of the British government. He sought out the IRA and climbed the ranks of the organization as a result of his commitment to his own beliefs and desires. While in prison, Sands did not quit fighting the British government. He began to educate himself and recognize the value of education in the fight for an independent Ireland. He understood the importance of public validation for the IRA and their cause, and he would not let the British government criminalize their political actions. Bobby Sands decided to die on his hunger strike because he knew nothing would change for the prisoners of Long Kesh prison if he did not. His self-sacrifice, along with 9 others, would garner the attention of the United Kingdom and bring changes to a broken system,